get started. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our event as part of the Leeds Digital Festival, where we will be tackling the very hot topic on how on earth companies out there can attract those very elusive tech candidates in this post-COVID world that we found ourselves in. For those of you that don't know, I'm Sarah Pawson. I'm one of the directors of Fruition IT, who are a technology solutions business based in Leeds, and we work with a number of organisations helping them to do just that, really. So I'm going to come on now and introduce our panel first of all. So very happy to welcome a kind of diverse panel this morning with a broad range of experiences that they will be able to share with you all. So I'll come on to you first, Jess, if you could introduce yourselves and tell everyone a little bit about your background.
Hi there, everyone. So I'm Jess Sewter. I'm from Generation UK, and I work as Regional Director for Generation, so look after Leeds City region. My background has been working within education and working with industry for over 20 years in FE and university, and now in the education charity sector. So we reach out to unemployed people, we train them up, and we help them secure amazing roles. So we are global, and we've been in the UK since 2019, and in Leeds we've launched this year.
Thank you, Jess. Clive, I'll come to you next.
Morning, everyone. So my name's Clive Smart. I'm the Head of Talent Acquisition here at Sky Betting and Gaming in Leeds. Basically, my team recruits tech and digital staff for our offices throughout the UK. Being in the recruitment industry far too many years, shall I say, but it's back in the days of advertising in the Yorkshire Post and using fax machines. However, recruitment has changed since back in those days. I would never use a fax machine ever to hire anybody. There is definitely a skill shortage, which I know we're going to be talking about later. But the thing that I'm passionate about as well is trying to give people new opportunities to get into the industry. Recruitment, a lot of the time, you know, we're sort of seen as the devil. We're headhunting and taking people out of organisations, and I think sometimes we need to try and be putting people in at the start of the funnel. So it's about, for me, having those conversations rather than I've got a load of vacancies on my sheet. What are we going to do to fill these, and where are we going to find these people from?
Thanks, Clive. Charlotte, I'll come to you.
Hi everyone, I am Charlotte Speak and I'm the founder of Power of the Parent. I work with businesses to help them attract and retain their awesome talent who happen to be parents and often are kind of in that return phase of coming back from any form of parental leave. I set up in March 2018. My business very much comes from the heart. I had a pretty rocky experience of being a parent in the workplace. My girls are now 7 and 4. But for me, I think there's so much more to life for parents at work, because I don't think you stop developing just because you've had a family. I think actually there are heaps of strengths and skills that you still bring. And I love to be able to work with organisations who don't just see the need to have a conversation with parents, but also to support line managers as well, because actually that's a really big pinch point when it comes to supporting anybody, but certainly when you're talking to parents in the workplace, I think they play a huge role in engagement. So that's me in a nutshell. My background was in HR prior to this, and learning and development, talent management, that kind of thing. So I've always operated in that world. So yeah, putting it all to good use.
Thank you, Charlotte. And then last but not least, Amal, over to you.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us, Sarah. So my name's Amal. I am the COO of a company called Northcoders. Northcoders started life as a coding bootcamp. We train people to become developers in as quickly as 13 weeks. And then we help them find roles. Last count was 270 businesses. The idea for Northcoders was born actually at Sky Bet. Chris, my business partner and one of the founders, was working at Sky Bet and noticed the digital shortage that Clive mentioned and we're going to be talking about today back in 2015. And he had actually learnt to code at a London-based bootcamp, one of the first organisations to bring that kind of idea over from the States. And he thought, wouldn't it be great one day to do it up north as a northerner? He met his fellow co-founder in London and thought, one day let's do it up north. Let's really do something to try and move the needle and kind of lift this region up. Hence the name Northcoders. And yeah, as I said, we've helped change over 900 lives so far, and we'll hit our 1,000th graduate, I think, towards the end of this year. So yeah, that's it.
Amazing. Look forward to hearing more from you shortly, Amel. So I think it's safe to say that demand for tech talent in 2021 is absolutely booming, off the scale. I don't think anybody that works in the sector has ever known things to be so busy. We're seeing significant investment from venture capitalists into the British technology market. And I think there was a record 15 billion ploughed into UK tech last year. We're seeing salaries in niche roles double and triple. We're seeing UK-based companies having to compete with Silicon Valley powerhouses. And it's tough out there to attract, it's tough to retain, and I think it's needless to say that companies need to really consider alternative solutions moving forward to really address the challenge. I think it's also really important that companies become tuned in to what candidates really want. So there's kind of a twofold aspect to this. We've recently conducted a survey of over 500 technology candidates, and we'll be sharing the results of this survey shortly. But I think the results weren't shocking, but I think what is still shocking is that companies maybe still aren't listening. Obviously, the topic of remote working isn't a new one, and I think everybody out there knows that tech candidates now, tech employees want an aspect of remote working, and actually what's most important is that they want the freedom and autonomy to make that decision themselves. I think that's about feeling trusted and empowered to know that as an individual, you'll make the right decision about where to work and when. I think we're still absolutely seeing salary and benefits as being a key driver for individuals. And I think at the end of the day, we all need money to live and survive. But I think that's closely followed by culture, flexible working and training. And these aspects are becoming absolutely paramount to retention of key individuals. We'll share the survey results within the next couple of weeks with everybody, and it will be broadcasted across the marketplace. But let's crack on and come onto the panel and get your kind of words of wisdom this morning. So, Clive, I'm going to come to you first because you're in the weeds of this right now, aren't you? Of this being a challenge. And as talent acquisition partner for SBG, probably one of Yorkshire's most prolific hirers, I'd say, right now in the space. How are you finding things? How's the market for you? And what challenges are you facing with attracting and retaining talent?
I was going to joke and say it's easy, but it's not. Bear with 2 seconds. It's got some bad echo. Yeah, it's a different market. I was around in the last recession, and I don't think we bounced back like this. I think what we've got to factor in is lots of companies went on a hiring freeze last year. We were quite fortunate we didn't go on a hiring freeze, so we probably did have a bit of a competitive advantage over a lot of people. But then what you're finding now is a lot of people are doing last year's hiring. Then they've got the new investment as well. So it's like there's probably more jobs than ever, but obviously this pool of candidates is still the same as pre-pandemic levels. The other thing to factor in is a lot of companies cancelled various training schemes, graduate schemes. So eventually there's going to be less talent available for people to look at. You've got a lot of people convert from contract to perm, but then now they're going back to the contracting space as well. Like Sarah said earlier on, is we've now got global competition, so it's not just competing across for us, the M62 corridor. We've got people from Silicon Valley, Berlin, you name it, they're coming after our people and everyone else's people. So for us, it's about making it a great place to work, having a great remote working policy. I think for some people, it's that career development. We're finding some people are moving for the career development and they're just not ready yet for that next step up, but somebody thinks they are. So it's like, you can't make people stay when they're not ready for that next step, or we deem them not ready. But I think for some companies, it's about making sure those people have a great experience, and they perhaps do have to move to other companies, gain that extra experience, and then potentially come back as well.
Thanks, Clive. It would be interesting, won't it, to see in kind of 2 to 3 years' time the impact of last year's lack of training, development and apprenticeship schemes, and how that will hit us, because we'll have a shortage again of those mid-level candidates. I think that happened when we went back to, 2008, kind of 2 years on. It was a very similar experience for those of us that were around then.
And I'd say with the salary inflation piece as well, is I think a lot of people got to understand is who is your competition. So sometimes, you know, you might be competing against a similar sized business, but if you're competing against someone that's maybe a venture capitalist backed business, they've only got 2 roles to fill. They need to fill, and they've got a blank checkbook. So there are some really crazy salaries going around at the moment, but there's a reason. They might only have 2 roles to fill. Yeah, I might have 22 of the same to fill.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what alternative solutions are SBG currently exploring to address this challenge for your business? And what's working and what isn't, or what's coming up?
We've obviously widened the talent pool, so we're starting to search further afield. But obviously, one of the first questions people come up is, what's your remote working policy? What's your base salary? We're restricted in a way because we can't recruit outside of the UK for tax reasons. So these great companies that are approaching our people from Silicon Valley, great, but unfortunately we can't go the opposite way. We'd have to look at potentially relocators. However, with Brexit and the costs of relocating people, we do have a policy where we can do it, but not in the numbers that we used to do pre-Brexit days, if that makes sense. We're also looking at alternative ways to hire talent into our business for potentially entry-level roles. So we've got appetite from leadership team to sign off additional roles as alternative ways to bring in new talent as well. At the moment, we've adopted hybrid working. We are going to hopefully make a decision on remote working shortly. So some roles for certain specialist skill sets, such as iOS and Golang, can go remote, but we're probably going to go to a blanket remote policy in the future, but then also have it where there is a place for the office, people come in as and when they need to do for team collaboration. One of the things that we've done recently that I'm really proud of is we put together a self-funded version of the Kickstart scheme. So we've just hired 13 young people that joined SBG, ranging from corporate function type roles to technology roles as well. For these young people, they were long-term unemployed. Some had a little bit of work experience, but we worked with Street League, who are an enterprise charity. We worked with Princess Trust, Job Centre, a number of other charities. These roles were never advertised on the careers site. What we've done is we've actually gone to various community groups to find people that never get those opportunities in the first place to work for us or other competitors. We've gone to those areas that we all drive through around Leeds, but probably often don't stop. And we've actually found a really diverse panel of young people that are going to join us. Hopefully it's going to be a success, and then we get future investment to roll out bigger intakes in coming months and years. So that's something that we did that I was really passionate about. And we've actually got one person that's joined the people team. So they're going to spend a number of months supporting the recruitment team and the people function as well.
Amazing. Holly was talking about it yesterday and saying that it's great because they're so fresh that they just challenge the norm of thinking and ask questions that perhaps someone who's more experienced wouldn't want to ask, because it might not be appropriate to ask, but actually it gets everybody thinking differently. Yeah.
And when we hired them, because some of them had never worked before, we've done additional training. So we've done things like business etiquette training, but we've also done like budget management, because we're going to pay these people a wage, but what we don't want to do is give them this money and then after week one they're coming to us like, can I have a loan? You know, so we're going to give them some of the skills that a lot of people just take for granted.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And how do you convince the exec team at SBG that they need to invest in skills development and things like the self-funded Kickstart scheme? What role do you play in that, and how do you kind of get them on board?
Sometimes it's about getting that initial idea and then putting it together, but not just going on your own. So you might need to use other people's support. So obviously I worked with Holly and a few other people. Then we go normally forward to the leadership team or exec, and then you do your presentation. Hopefully you get the buy-in. we're quite fortunate at Skybet. Most of the time they say yes to a lot of the things that we go forward with. But I think the one thing I've learned is to try and not go after too many things at once, because it's great when they say yes and sign it off and say, run with it, Clive, get it delivered. But that's when the hard work really starts. So sometimes you can't go forward with everything you want to do.
Picking your battles.
It's partly picking your battles, but also it's like you want success rather than I've got 12 things to do and I've not got time to do any of them.
Yeah, no, makes sense. So in your opinion, so having been in the market for a very long time now and with a wealth of experience, what does the future for tech hiring look like, and what are the key things that companies need to consider?
I think salary is always going to be that driver for a lot of people, but we're starting to find some people left for these huge salaries wanting to come back because they're missing the people, the culture and the working environment, and they're suddenly realizing money isn't everything. I think also we probably need to work out how long do we want people to stay for, and that's the bit I think we don't really know yet, because of the market has completely changed. I think candidates will want to dip in and out of working for employers, so you probably won't stay as long as you would have done in the past. It might become more of a gig economy situation. I think the problem is we don't really have this crystal ball. This is a market like we've never experienced before. Maybe the pot of money from some of these companies will run out as well. I think words of wisdom, I think it's just, we've got to use some of the techniques we've used before, but then also be open to new ideas and actually having a conversation with leadership to say, look, these roles I can fill, but they're going to take a little bit longer, but also what alternatives can we do? And perhaps we need to get involved in other conversations that make your company a great place to work as well. I think if you haven't got a decent remote working policy, you're a company where you're trying to force everyone back to the office 5 days a week, you're going to lose your staff all tomorrow. I think also one of the things I've always said is, how did you treat your people during COVID, especially when we had those lockdowns? People won't forget, if there wasn't a level of transparency, you didn't put people first, eventually people will think, well, I would have probably looked for another job last year. I stayed because there were no jobs. They'll be updating their CV probably now and starting to have those conversations. And I think the other thing with this whole remote working, it's a lot more easier for people to attend interviews because you don't need to book a day's holiday. You can just block out time in your diary, which is great for us as recruiters. But also it's like people probably will go to more opportunities than ever before.
Absolutely. And I think we've seen people perhaps consider more opportunities than they would have done previously because of that option of doing a 30-minute online call just to kind of suss something out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Clive. That's been really useful. Quick question before we move on. I was just thinking about this. Obviously, I know you've just invested invest heavily in office space, and you have some amazing offices that are obviously places where people want to come and work. Do you think we'll start to see companies investing less in physical space and maybe start to move that money over into other areas around training, development, salaries, etc.? Or do you think companies are still going to have those amazing office hubs?
I think some companies will, but then I think some companies exist already where they don't even have an office at all. They'll probably just have a PO box for financial tax reasons. I did read an article recently where some companies were considering investing in a countryside property with state-of-the-art internet facilities, so people could go there for team building sessions and to work somewhere different from a well-being perspective. I don't really know what the future of office space is, really, if I'm honest. Probably Leeds is pretty quiet as it is, so it's like, how do we get people back to the office but also keep remote working, because it still has a lot of benefits for people, especially myself. I have a family. It's nice sometimes to be home when it's tea time and do the school run more. So I wouldn't personally want to go back to 5 days a week, but I do sort of enjoy sometimes going to work. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that balance is really important. Thanks, Clive. Jess, we're going to come on to you next. Jess, tell us a little bit about Generation, what your organisation does and how it helps companies who are struggling to attract talent.
So we were founded really for two main purposes, and we were born out of McKinsey & Company, management consultancy firm in the US. And those two purposes is one, to obviously address the emerging digital skills gap that was really prevalent in 2015, and supply employers with sort of highly motivated and trained talent to address those roles. And the other is to really sort of address inequality and to remove all the barriers that people face to access these incredible roles. So we have a real focus on diversity. We have a focus on 18 to 30-year-olds, but I was just saying to Charlotte that prior, during the pandemic, we did a lot of research to show that actually a lot of over 30s are struggling to get back into work. So we may be lifting the age cap there. But our cohorts are, generally 80% ethnic diverse. 100% of those people are out of work, are unemployed when we take them on, and about a third of those are long-term unemployed. We have 50% female, which really helps address the gender balance in tech. And we train them in boot camps aimed for specific roles that we know are in high demand and low supply. So we train cloud, software and data engineers, and we're running new programs like data analyst. And we are actually moving into other sectors like healthcare and green as those sectors grow as well. So there's a real purpose there, is to address where the jobs are needed and supply that talent through. So what we can really add to employers is give them access to non-traditional pipelines of recruitment. So they may use recruitment and they talk to universities and schools and colleges, but like Clive was saying, which is really an innovative of SBG, we go out into diverse communities within Leeds city region, and we talk to referral organisations, we go to housing associations, and we talk to people who are out of work, find that potential talent. We hire on intrinsics, and there's lots of testing to get them to know that they can do it, but really on motivation and passion for the role, and that they've got the right mindset and the behaviours for the role. So what we can offer employers is access to that at a time when people are really trying to increase the diversity of their organisations and get better representation. But I suppose for me, it's a real passion of mine is to connect these communities within the Leeds area to a really high growth, successful sector within Leeds, and bring that together across the city.
Excellent, thanks, Jess. Where do you get the funding from then for this? So
half of our funding is government funding, so European social funding, and that will fund us to instruct and deliver. And then we have some generous sponsorship from big corporate partners like Microsoft and so on. And then we ask employers for most of our courses a small contribution to, and that helps us keep it completely free for the learners on our programs. So we provide for them laptops if they need it, and quite a few do, Wi-Fi if they need it, a place to work if they need it, if they can't work from their homes. We provide mentors and coaches, and we coach them 6 months after placement as well. So there's a lot of wraparound support and care during our programs. But what I think is really exciting is that the tech sector, above all other sectors, has really embraced the bootcamp style, as Amal will testify. And I think other sectors will follow, because it is such a tangible action that leads to a tangible outcome to address a need.
Absolutely. And have you got any examples, Jess, of success stories of people that have come through Generation and maybe now operating in tech roles?
So we're very new in Leeds, so we haven't placed hardly as many as Northcoders have in Leeds, but in nationally we've helped 40,000 people into work. No, internationally, globally, nationally up to nearly 500. And in Leeds, we've just placed somebody with undigital into an apprenticeship there. But we've just running an AWS Cloud Practitioner program that finishes mid-October, and we've got somebody there with a refugee background who was desperate to get into tech but had no means, couldn't afford university. We've got a woman from Romania who's been really struggling to get the work that she wants to get into. So it's really wonderful to be able to see these people get into these opportunities and become DevOps engineers, cloud practitioners, hopefully by mid-October. We've had people who we've got some people with degrees who have either suffered from racism in an organisation and needed to get out and move to another sector, and people who just never thought they could make it. And and are now working as engineers and absolutely loving it. So we're always looking at on LinkedIn for our alumni and seeing where they end up. So it feels very that it's making a real difference and a real impact to people's lives. Yeah, absolutely.
And how can you ensure the development of these people with little or no experience? So it gives some reassurance to any companies that might be listening today or listening in the future that actually somebody from Generation actually can become, you know, your future talent.
Well, it needs to be high quality training. And of course, the recruitment process I've just spoken to, you know, you need to make sure that you recruit the right people. And the other big part of the model that we run is we don't just teach the tech, we teach the behavior and mindset that's needed to be successful in that role. So a lot of the curriculum is mapped with employers, with people who manage those roles or people who are in those roles. And there's a lot of time taken to think about, is it team working? Is it problem solving? Is it communication? So we take that very seriously, and we talk to our learners all the way through those boot camps. So I think with the boot camp style, there's that sort of, they're very intensively trained, so they're highly motivated when they come out, and that ramp up from when they start in a job is much quicker than perhaps if they'd come from another kind of program. So hopefully that reassures, and also that we continue to mentor and coach them while they're in placement. I think a challenge that we find is that obviously we're talking about entry-level talent, and probably when Clive, you're talking about getting people from Silicon Valley, it's probably not for entry-level roles. So I suppose what we would really look for is like-minded employers who are willing to take that risk of taking someone who doesn't come from their normal pipeline, and sort of embrace that. The feedback we've had from employers is that Generation grads are, you know, really outperform peers from a similar program, or that the retention's high, so that they're loyal because they haven't been moving around. But what we do find is that entry-level roles might be advertised as entry-level roles, but they're still asking for 3 years plus experience. And I suppose it's that, could they be entry, but just with a little bit of skills and development, get to where you want quite quickly? So I guess it's that ask, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing that a lot more now. People are recognizing that they need to hire not for people that are ready here and now, but are going to be ready in 12 to 18 months time. And like you said, investing in them does bring that loyalty that comes with it. And you know, if you can then get another 3 years tenure out of an individual, then it's a great opportunity for everybody. And also doing the right thing. There's a human element to it as well, isn't there, with what you're doing? So thanks, Jess. That leads on really nicely to Amal. Obviously, a slightly different flavour from Northcoders. I know you provide coding boot camps to people who are looking to kickstart their career, specifically in software development. How can your solution help companies like SBG? I know you've already worked with them before, but maybe give us some other examples who are in this predicament of struggling to attract and hire talent, particularly in the software engineering space, which is a problem area. And you're on mute, Amal.
Of course I am. Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for that. And great to hear about how Generation is kind of expanding into Leeds. I kind of met the folk that started up the Manchester office a couple of years ago. So no, it's incredible work. And, you know, there's a lot of similarities in the sense that, you know, diversity and inclusion is very much at the heart of what we do. It was one of the founding values, really, that drew me to the business and sort of got me to invest and have been in part, you know, been involved with from the start. But yeah, Northcoders, we just offer software engineering at the moment. That will change, but we have been doing it for just 5.5 years. We started in April 2016. We started with 10 people, 4 on that course for women, and we gave fully funded scholarships too. And it was that, and I was one of the 10 actually. I met Chris, who, as I mentioned, used to work at Sky Bet as a developer when he was dreaming up Northcoders. And I met him at an event, and he was like, "Well, come and do this course." And I was like, "I don't know the first thing about coding," you know, I've spent 20 years in the music business. I didn't even know what a line of code is. Yes, I was looking to get involved in setting up my own tech startup, and I was trying to figure out where these mythical developers came from, looking for a technical co-founder. And he said, well, look, why don't you come on this course? Here's some materials to help you understand what it is. Those materials have since become our preparation steps, but I'll talk about that more in a second. You know, we'll see if you like it, and if you do, you know, we'll verify that you've understood those materials before coming on the course, and like you know, a tech test, an entry challenge, we call it. And then, you know, if you pass that, then you can do the course. So at the start, as I said, there were 10 of us, and straight away, the two things that hit me very quickly were that there was no money that changed hands until you'd done these preparation steps and passed the entry challenge, because we want to make sure that people know it's right for them, and that also that we're not taking on people, making them promises that if it isn't right, or putting them through what is a grueling 13-week program. I mean, I can testify that it is one of the most mentally challenging things that I've ever done in my life. And, you know, I was 40 at the time. I've done some quite tough things in my life, but, you know, but the thing is, I think really the key of it is that extrapolate that forward, and 900 alumni, but 1 in 3 people who come to us actually start a course with Northcoders. And that isn't us trying to be elitist, it's trying to make sure that the people are right for the program, both from an attitude point of view. They prep steps to 20 to 30 hours, that 30 hours worth of work, so they need to do that, and then we need to verify that they've got it. And there's no point trying to take people, and we found out the hard way, there's no, you know, that people that aren't right for the program, really, they struggle. They've had to give up their jobs or careers, or do, you know, make a shift. They've got to come in or do it remotely now, 8:30 to 5 every single day. And we make it uncomfortable, because it's in being uncomfortable mentally that the learning, the real quick, intense learning really happens. So to answer your questions, how can we help businesses is, well, we make sure that they're really good before they come to us, and then we really do test them to a point whereby they get software development, and they get it quickly, and they get it in one technology stack, and then we force them to try out new technology stacks by the end that we haven't taught them, because we don't teach people to code at Northcoders, we teach people to teach themselves to code. And so people get jobs very quickly after they finish Northcoders. You know, to echo a lot of what Clive's saying, our job boards have never been so full. I think we've got about 30 companies on there now, probably advertising, probably about 40 to 50 roles at those organisations. So people leave Northcoders with a choice. There's no fee to hiring a Northcoder. We used to have a fee to businesses, but we don't anymore. Demand, we don't really want a barrier between the person doing our course and them getting that entry level role. But what we tend to find is they don't stay junior for very long, because we've taught them to teach themselves to code. They'll go into a company, they'll pick up that tech stack, that company's tech stack really quickly, and they'll make themselves invaluable. So, you know, that sweet spot for them losing that junior tag, obviously it's very different between companies and people at companies, is between a year and 2 years, usually about 18 months. They'll be considered senior in 3 years, and then we have, I was told last night of someone that's just become a CTO at a company. We've only got 5 years history, right? So we've got
who's become a CTO? That's incredible.
Do you know what? I'm trying to delve into my foggy mind from last night at who told me this and who it was, but I can't remember. But I will find out, and I will share that news. But the head of engineering at say a big car company, well-known car company, is someone who did that first bootcamp with me 5 years ago. And you know, we've got lots of stories like that, and we've only got a history of 5 years. We can't tell you where they're going to be in 7 years or 8 years, because that's as long as our sample size goes back.
That's incredible. Amazing to hear people are not just going in as software engineers, but also achieving that career progression as well into the head of engineering and CTO level. I know you've recently secured some funding from the National Skills Fund, which I'm assuming was a great thing for Northcoders. What does that mean for individuals that might be interested in sitting on the boot camp, sitting through the boot camp?
So skills boot camps it's called, and I have to say that this government doesn't do always things that I agree with or right, but one thing that I have to take my hat off and say that the DFE, the Department for Education Skills Bootcamp pilot that they're running is incredible. We've been talking to central government probably since about 2018 about doing this, and never did I think that they would go, right, actually let's fund loads and loads and loads of places nationally. And so Northcoders bid for this money. We are providing 288 scholarships, fully funded by the DFE for people to come and do Northcoders. They still have to do the prep steps. They still have to pass the entry challenge. And what this has meant is that actually we have made our entry challenge harder, and people are getting 100%, and we are absolutely oversubscribed. And the only two rules to getting this funding, other than obviously you know, the prep steps and the entry challenge, are they need to be a resident of, we've won it in 5 regions. So we've won it in the Northwest, so Manchester's where we're HQ'd, we've won it in Yorkshire and Humber, and then we've won it in the Northeast, and we will be opening up a hub there. And we've won it in both the East Midlands and the West Midlands, and we'll be opening up a hub in Birmingham really soon.
Half the country, Amal, you've got half the country there.
Well, we'd like to rebrand the Midland as North, and
well, I guess it depends where you live, whether or not it's the North or the South, isn't it?
But we often joke that if we ever go to London, we'll have to go North London, so we can be Northcoders as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think for us, it's over 270 businesses. And yes, the bootcamp is only one part of what we do. So we've got an apprenticeship business now that we've acquired and are growing. And we work with companies like Crisp and Pretty Little Thing for them to attract talent, bring them in as apprenticeships, and do our bootcamp as an apprenticeship program. So with the campaign we've just run with Pretty Little Thing is for 5 people to come and work there as apprentice software developers, and they had 90 applicants for that program.
Wow.
And now we are helping them filter those through by getting them through the prep steps and the entry challenge, and then they will make the final choice. And I guess the other new thing that we're doing is we're working with businesses to actually build teams for them, cross-blended teams. So it's a bit more of a consultancy arm, in that we know that our juniors are incredibly talented and can pick things up very quickly and can make very professional technology very quickly. But under the guidance of our senior developers, who are all mentors, not all senior developers are mentors, are great mentors, but all of Northcoders senior developers are, because they're all mentors on the course. And they will then kind of act as a senior developer on a team of people coming off the bootcamp, and we can consult them into a business. And with the ultimate aim of providing that bit where they're entry level, working on a company's technology under the stewardship of our seniors, and then they would just transfer to that company once they're not so junior, having had the domain experience of working on that company's technology, so they know the tech inside out. It's
a great model that I think works really, really well, and amazing that you're investing in such a broad range of solutions. Thanks for that, Amal. I want to come on to Charlotte now, because I don't want to run out of time and not have heard from Charlotte's wonderful work that she does. Charlotte, tell us a little bit about your business, first of all, set the scene.
So like I said, I suppose the way I describe it often is it's very heart-led. So when I returned to work after having had my eldest, I was all of the cliches. I didn't really know where I was in the workplace anymore. I wasn't sure where I added value or how I was going to do some of the famed or infamous juggling and all that kind of side of stuff. And I was immediately hit with a very negative narrative. I was told by a couple of different people, almost verbatim, I would struggle to develop now I was a mum, and I had all of these things swimming through my head. But also at the same time, I felt probably at my strongest because I thought I'm somebody's parent now, and I've therefore got all the practicalities of things like nursery fees to pay. But also I want to show her that absolutely you can be a strong woman in the workplace and still have a career and take into account your own definition of success and all that kind of side of it. Fast forward 3 years, with lots of different things happening in between that hopefully one day there'll be a memoir about it all, that just completely made me think there is more to this. I haven't stopped developing because I've had a child. It definitely, personally for me, increased my empathy, and I think the role that I started to then play in the workplace definitely shifted. I had to have a real good look around what progression looked like to me, not because it wasn't available, but because my definition of success had shifted and I needed to really lean into that. And I think that can sometimes feel quite uncomfortable. So kind of coupling my own personal experiences, and then the minute you start talking about your experience of being a returner or being a parent in the workplace, most people open up and go, yeah, that was me as well. Or the one that often gets a lot of nods from people is when I share that I didn't feel guilty for going back to work. I didn't worry or feel guilt for my eldest going to nursery. But then I felt guilty because I didn't feel guilty and thought, hang on a minute, I'm meant to feel guilty. That's what society tells me. So pulling all of that together and my L&D background and the fact that I was a qualified coach, I pulled it all together and Power of the Parent was born. It wasn't quite as, click a finger and it happened overnight. It's been the last 18 months, it has grown massively because there's been a lot of focus on supporting parents. Why I do what I do hasn't shifted or changed. What I do has, because I've kind of figured out who I am and what the business is and how best to work with different size of corporate clients, but it's still very much at the heart of it. It's supporting parents in the workplace, no matter what stage they're at. I do that through the employer side of things, or line managers as well.
Why do you think, I mean, we've been having children forever. Why is it a struggle for companies to provide opportunities, but also that safe landing when you come back after having a family? Why is it a challenge for a company to do that?
Yeah, I have been heard to say out loud several times, why are we still talking about this in 2021? But we are. I do think that we are fundamentally asking some people to change their belief systems. So it is still a gendered issue. So the motherhood penalty is still paying a huge amount forward towards the gender pay gap. And we are still talking predominantly about women in this space, which is absolutely right, because they are still facing that cliff drop off. But we've got to bring men and dads into the conversation more and more. The amount of companies that I'm working with at the moment who are talking about how do we encourage dads to share that they're going to become a parent, normally until a baby arrives or you've gone through adoption and that child is with you. It isn't as much of a physical change, and people therefore don't always tune into the fact that actually that second parent is going through a change as well. I think sometimes it can feel very much outside of their control, because I do think that there are a lot of societal factors that still trip us up for parents in the workplace. But I think rather than seeing that as a reason to not do something, I think we have to look at what can you do as an employer. One of the biggest reasons why there's around 870,000 women who identify as being economically inactive but want to work, and they're normally parents. And a lot of that is down to the cost of childcare, and which is just horrifically expensive. That doesn't mean that we've got, I think it's the second most expensive childcare system in the world after Australia or New Zealand. But we are also one of the ones that doesn't have a great subsidised childcare system. So it isn't all on employers. We have a broken system, and it is the system that lets us down. However, I do think that there are things that you could do as an employer. Look at how you could support somebody with childcare. I think sometimes we assume, unless we hear that there is a problem or we get feedback, we assume that everything's okay. When I was first starting out, I approached a company to see if they could make use of my services, and they said, no, like, thanks for your interest, but we haven't got an issue. They got back in touch last week to say, actually, we have got a problem now. We'd like to talk to you. And actually, the size of the problem is quite a large crevice of issues that have been falling down cracks because people haven't had the platform or the confidence to say how they're feeling, because you're already battling people's views and perspectives on what it's like to be a parent in the workplace. You are immediately classed as not as ambitious, or you're always going to be the one that's got to leave because nursery might call and say that your child's ill, or things like that. There's so many assumptions made, I think, about parents in the workplace that's why we're still getting it wrong, because we're not being curious. We're not asking people what they are interested in or what they can do or where their strengths are. We're still making so many assumptions.
And do you think this is a big challenge specifically in tech? High pressure jobs, obviously, people doing overworked because there is a skill shortage. Do you think that this has an impact on the tech sector specifically?
I think it has an impact on every single sector, but I imagine that the tech specific issues, there'll be a lot around the upskilling side of things, because it's going to move so quickly. If you are, for example, doing like a returner program or something like that, there's got to be an element of re-upskilling people or reskilling people, because if you've had a year or so out, even the availability of free courses and people upskilling themselves while they are away from the business is obviously still there, but it's a huge volume, isn't it? And the longer that goes on, the more people are still feeling really lost when they're returning, because they want to go back to that career, but they're also feeling out of their depth because everything's changing, everything's moving on. The skills that are in demand are different, and it can feel really hard to get back in.
You mentioned returner programs, and I know you're supporting William Hill at the moment with their returner program, big tech employer in the area, and we've seen some really successful returner programs help people with some great skills and experience get back into work, specifically in tech. Just talk us through what a returner program is, what it entails, and what are the benefits for businesses today?
So there's a few different formats that people will use depending on what the company is able to offer. And so some people will guarantee a job at the end of it. There are some that don't, and it's more of like a returnship. So more of like an intern thing where you'll go and have a period of time somewhere. But from what I've seen more recently, most people are guaranteeing jobs at the end of them. They are likely to include things like your basic induction experience, but then on top of that, you will get support around from people like me or somebody internal, because lots of companies do this brilliantly themselves. They don't always have to bring in somebody external to do it, but it will be things like, how do you reintegrate back into the workplace in a really meaningful way, not just a tick box of do this, have that, say the other, but how does it really feel when you've got this huge dynamic change at home, when you've perhaps been at home and now all of a sudden you're bringing in the complexity of work as well, paid work. Parenting is definitely work, but I think the other things that you'll often find will be some technical upskilling. So depending on the industry and the company, again, most people are factoring that in. Ideally, there would be some coaching, some one-to-one or group coaching, because it is a huge period of change, and helping somebody with everything from things like imposter syndrome to how you have some really crucial conversations, how you figure out, you know, what's rubber, what's glass, what can you let bounce, like drop and bounce, and what's going to drop and smash into smithereens. Helping people get back into some of these conversations is huge. In terms of benefits for organisations, I think there's loads. So from an engagement perspective, you're already talking to a load of candidates who want to be back in the workplace. They are ready to not be the one that's having to factor in nap times anymore, or that they want something for themselves. They've got the headspace. They want to be somewhere different, and that's got to go a long way in terms of keeping people engaged throughout the recruitment process. There are huge economic benefits as well. So from a, you know, there's more than philanthropy to it, but I definitely think that, you know, the impact of getting these women who want to work back into the workplace, we're talking like billions of pounds into the economy. That could actually in turn then really help us have a much better subsidised childcare system. It's the way that the Nordics do it, and there's loads of brilliant economic modelling to say that actually it's, you know, it is worth doing, and it would pay back 3, 4, 5-fold. And you know, the really obvious ones around improved gender diversity, because you are predominantly talking to women a lot of the time with these conversations. So, and that is that kind of 25 to 40 age bracket is where you've got women dropping out of the workplace because they've had a family, however that family has become about. And they're the ones that are really struggling to get back in because of some of the reasons that I've shared that I face personally, but then, you know, millions and millions of intersectionalities on top of that as well. So yeah, I think there's huge benefit to it.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's really interesting and insightful, and relatable as well. But so thanks everybody. I think we've covered some really great range of kind of solutions and alternative approaches to this problem. And before we wrap up, I just want to see whether anyone's got any questions. If you want to pop them in the chat, I think we've got 5 minutes for a couple of questions that we can put to the panel. Just see whether anybody's got any. If not, we can. Are we starting to see the great resignation happening? Clive, I'm going to put that one to you. this myth of the great resignation.
I'm going to say no, actually. Yes,
okay.
We do have lots of backfills on our recruitment tracker, but what we're finding is we're getting a lot of backfills because people are moving up roles, so they're getting their opportunities within Sky Bet, but also we're part of a bigger group, so they might move even from a software engineer to a senior to a principal, etc. So we've got a lot of people that are actually leaving their current role, but they're staying within us, our group. Yes, we have a portion of people that are going for opportunities elsewhere, but if we've broke it down and analysed it, it doesn't look as bad. But then if you looked on the sheet and goes, everything's backfill, then it does look bad, but there's detail behind it. So I don't think it's as bad as people make out sometimes, because you've got to factor in other people doing those other things internally.
Absolutely. And I guess crystal ball question, when do we expect the market to calm down and kind of settle down again and start to get some normality with all the crazy things that are happening in the tech sector? Anybody want to take that? Amal, you got any thoughts on that?
I don't
crystal ball job, but
I don't think it is. I think the biggest thing that this pandemic has shown us is that every business that hasn't digitally transformed needs to digitally transform. Mm-hmm. And so that because not just working from home, but actually offering something that is at the tip of your fingertips rather than having to go out and get. And obviously those huge businesses, so we help a business called Arup, for example, and they're on a panel that I'm running later on at 1 o'clock, and they're a global firm of engineers, and they use software to help them in these engineering projects, you know, civil engineering, structural engineering. And what they're doing is they're training their engineers to become software developers, and we're on to our third cohort of people from Arup to do that. And you know, we're talking maybe 30 people have done that, but actually they have proven that, you know, they can save 40, 50 business days if they run their problems through a piece of software that they've developed, rather than kind of getting engineers to kind of model it out without software. And if we look at them as a problem statement and how many people they employ and how many people they could employ that have both sets of skills, then you go, well, actually, it's never going to end. You know, the need for software developers, coders, techies, data engineers, all of the disciplines, I think we're going to have a shortage for a very long time.
Which is absolutely the reason why we need to be engaging with Generation and Northcoders and looking at returner programs and looking at all of these alternative routes and methods, because this isn't going away, is it? I think that's the key message from today. This problem isn't going away. Fab. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. Thanks very much to our panel of speakers for sharing your words of wisdom. We will make this session available on our YouTube channel, and it will be shared across social media. So thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
Thank
See you
you.
all soon.
Bye.
Cheers now. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.